Hey guys, how you doing? It's Tom Breeze here, and in this training video I'm going to be speaking about something that's potentially very, very controversial, and I'll explain it all in just a second. Before we get into that, just to let you know, the Friday the 21st and Saturday the 22nd of May, we're running the one-day confident speaker courses. They're completely sold out now. However, not all is not lost yet. If you still want to potentially come on the course, because every now and again we get cancellations, etc. If you're interested in potentially coming along to one of those courses, if you couldn't make those dates and you want to do some other work with me in the future and get on the first come first serve list, so to speak, all you need to do is fill in your details below, and I've got some amazing offers for you that's going to be coming up in the very near future. So fill in your details below, name, email, telephone number, press the submit button, and I'll explain all. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about, the highly controversial bit, let's get into it now. This is about the election, and obviously the results are still being counted, so I'm still a little bit hesitant as to what I really should be saying. But something that came up from election last night that I thought was very, very interesting, and it's all about the Lib Dems, basically. You see, whatever happens, whether we go to a hung parliament or not, I'm quite interested I was very interested really to see what the Lib Dems results were, because obviously everyone was talking about Nick Clegg about 2 or 3 weeks ago, how well he did when he was answering all those questions, when they did the panel interviews almost, or the panel questions. He did very well in those, and he stood up, spoke very eloquently, came across very well. The thing is, his communication wasn't as effective, and that kind of came through in the results last night. That all those results that were collected didn't show that the Lib Dems did that well. They didn't do as well as expected. Now, isn't that interesting? Because I always think that with public speaking, that's basically what the election's all about. Who can speak the best? Obviously, the policies are very, very important, but typically most of the UK tend to vote in the way that they see their party political leaders, basically. If they see them as very, very confident or very good, they'll pick up on that, and the positive vibes go around about that particular person. That's exactly what happened with Nick Clegg and the Lib Dems. Now, the thing is, with the presentations that he was giving, with the words he was choosing, with the communication he was giving, yes, it all sounded very well, very good and very well, but was it effective? And the answer's got to be no. We didn't get the results we were expecting as a result of their responses. Now, the important thing is, over the next few weeks, I'm going to be going through some of his speeches, get some clips together, and give you an idea of how he may have made a few mistakes, or how he could have improved his communication. And this is going to be my little case study as such, my little project. And I'm going to show you maybe what he did wrong, what he could do to improve. And yes, of course, I'm not Nick Clegg, I'm not a politician, so you're going to have to take what I say with a pinch of salt, and you'll have your own views. And that's why it's controversial, because I'll say things that you might agree with and might disagree with. But expect a few videos on that as well. In fact, I'll be sharing that with anyone that signs up below as well, and I'll be going through that, and you'll get first dibs on that, let's say. So if you do want to find out all my take on the election, fill in your details below, press the submit button, because there's going to be some more information about that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, the whole election really, was this idea around persuasion as well. First off, you have two parties that are the big ones, don't you? You have Labour and Conservative. They're the biggies in our minds. And then you had Lib Dems as well, that started getting bigger and bigger. Again, I don't want to ruffle up any feathers, so if you listen to this and you think you completely disagree, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with you to kind of rip me apart and all that sort of thing, because I'm not here to tell you how it is, if that makes sense. However, what I would say is that with the psychology of the human mind, we find that we like to have a choice. And if it's been identified as there's only two real options, that's a very, very strong way of us immediately thinking like that. Let me explain. First of all, you've got Labour and Conservatives. It's very, very difficult for the Lib Dems to get in there, because when there's a choice of three, it becomes a little bit more confusing, and as a result, we kind of go back to our default response. That's where you tend to find that people become Labour people, and they give themselves that identity, or they become Conservative people, because they give themselves that identity, and they tend to want to be biased towards them. If they come up with a particular issue or policy, we tend to find that if we're a Labour person or a Conservative person, we'll immediately agree with what our leader is saying. Does that make sense? We'll be very biased towards that person, because we have this choice. And as soon as you have two choices, it becomes very easy for you to say A or B. Does that make sense? So, why do I say this? Because it's important with your presentations as well. When you start putting information together, sometimes it can be very, very beneficial to highlight the fact that it could be almost like a two-horse race. Let me explain how else this happens. Coke and Pepsi are the perfect example, and they go up against each other and explain to people that, well, you're either going to have Coke or Pepsi. Does that make sense? Coca-Cola do it very well as well. They tend to go with you're either going to choose Coke or Diet Coke. Does that make sense? So if you're someone who's looking to be a little bit more healthy, let's say, you might say, well, I'll go for Diet Coke instead of Coke. Does that make sense? Pepsi are doing this very well at the moment. They've either got Pepsi or Pepsi Max. They don't tend to advertise their Diet Pepsi too much. They have advertised a lot for Pepsi Max because it's that the sweetener and not the sugar, so it's their equivalent of the diet version. But it's a very clever way of them doing it. They say it's either this or that. Does that make sense? Because you eliminate any other choices. And that's a great way, that's exactly how the mind works. As soon as you're down to two choices, you then start making choices based on those two things. There could be other options that are really, really quite useful to listen to, and probably the better options sometimes as well. However, it's as soon as the mind thinks that there's only two potential choices or two valid choices, we tend to stick to them and ignore everything else. In fact, we start to think negatively about other options as well. So in your presentations, think about how you can get people to think in your way. Because if you can get people to think in just two ways, then you can stack the argument in favour of one argument as opposed to the other. Great way, I've worked with a client recently and we're talking about greenhouse gases and we're talking about global warming, etc. Now, there were some scientists that said it's definitely happening. Global warming is definitely happening. There's a lot of other scientists saying it's not happening. However, there's millions of scientists out there that are saying, well, we haven't got the evidence. And it could be a range of different things. It could be the solar things. It could be solar flares. It could be all these types of things that potentially could be affecting the Earth's atmosphere. Now, if you turn this debate into three arguments, it becomes very difficult to win that argument. Does it make sense? Because it's always difficult because someone else will say, oh, well, it could be this, it could be that. As a result, what you want to do is say basically that there's some scientists that believe in this and some that don't believe in it. The people that don't believe in it say this. The people that do believe in it are saying this. So you've made it a two-horse race, so to speak. You've said there's two viewpoints on this. Obviously there's more, but you've said to your audience there's two here. And then you can stack your argument in favour for one as opposed to the other. It's a debating technique that I've used for many, many years, and it's a very, very effective technique to get people to agree with you straight away. In fact, I've told a lot of people to do this when they have interviews at their jobs, and there may be like 3 or 4 people that could potentially get that job. It's quite useful in subtle ways. Obviously, I don't want you to be using this in a controversial way, but what you can potentially do is set it up so it sounds like it's either going to be you or the other person, thus eliminating the rest of the competition. Okay, I hope that made sense. If you need more information about that, again, fill in your details below and I'll explain exactly how that works. Another example of this is Chelsea and Man U, and I know I ruffle up feathers when I talk about football, but it tends to be that people now look at the Premiership as, well, either Chelsea or Man U are going to win it. It didn't always used to be like that. It used to be Man U and Arsenal, but more recently it's become Man U and Chelsea. And as soon as that happens, as soon as you think Man U or Chelsea, everyone starts talking negatively about the following clubs. So everyone tends to talk about negatively about Arsenal. They say, oh, it's full of youngsters. They're a great team. And at various points, they should have been winning the Premier League this year. And that's enough of me talking about it. I'm trying to be as political as I can with football supporters right now. But it's coming up this weekend. I'm going to the match, and come on, Chelsea. Let's go through let's go through a summary basically. First off, the Friday and Saturday completely sold out. If you do want to be on the reserve list, if we get cancellations and I call you up straight away, all you need to do is put your details below, name, email, telephone number, press the submit button, and I'll give you all the information. And all the information, you'll be first to be informed about upcoming work that I'll be doing as well. Then we have the more controversial information with Nick Clegg and the Lib Dems, and also the persuasion techniques of identifying just two choices as opposed to millions of choices. Link it down to 2 basically, because it's a very, very persuasive way of speaking to your audiences. So I hope you've really enjoyed this video. I'm going to be putting together a load more information about the election and hopefully not ruffle up too many feathers. And keep in touch. I'll be in touch with you very, very soon with more videos. Hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll speak to you very soon. Thanks very much.